There is a reason this knowledge survived floods, empires, and inquisitions, and still avoided the hands of the unready. For thousands of years, a single principle was hidden inside the temples of Kemet, etched not in words, but in silence. The priests did not teach it openly. They watched, they waited, they listened to how a person breathed when no one was watching. Because this was never a teaching for the curious, it was a key so dangerous that the ancients believed speaking it aloud to the wrong mind would fracture the psyche itself. The Greeks later called it the union of opposites. The Indians hinted at it through Shiva and Shakti. The Tibetans buried it beneath layers of paradox and koan. But Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the keeper of balance, encoded it most precisely. Not as philosophy, not as morality, but as technology, a method for ending inner war. Most human suffering does not come from pain itself. It comes from division, the mind against the body, desire against fear, logic against intuition, light against shadow. Modern psychology dances around this truth with language like integration and acceptance. Neuroscience whispers about hemispheric coherence and nervous system regulation. Quantum physicists speak awkwardly of particles that are waves and waves that are particles. But the ancient priests were brutally clear. As long as opposites fight inside you, peace is impossible. They knew something else too, something far more unsettling. That the moment opposites stop fighting, power returns. This is why the Hermetic key was hidden, because a human being who no longer leaks energy through inner conflict becomes unpredictable. Tonight, you are not here by accident. Something in you is tired of choosing sides. Something in you is exhausted by contradiction. Something in you is ready to stop fighting itself. But listen carefully. This is not comfort teaching. This is not self-help. This is not meditation for relaxation. This is reconciliation at the root. Done correctly, even once, it can permanently alter how your nervous system processes reality. Done incorrectly, rushed, ego-driven, or half-hearted, it can amplify confusion, dissociation, or emotional flooding. That is why the priests insisted on preparation. So before we go any further, pause. Place one hand on your chest, one on your lower abdomen. Breathe slowly, not deeply, just honestly. If you feel resistance, skepticism, or a strange pull to stop listening, that is not a flaw. That is the gate testing you. Because the Hermetic key does not open to belief, it opens to readiness. And readiness feels like standing on a threshold you can no longer unsee. If you are still here, the journey has already begun. Ancient realization that every inner conflict is two expressions of the same force, torn apart by the mind. It sounds harmless when phrased this way, almost poetic. But when the priests of Thoth spoke of polarity, they did not mean good and evil in a moral sense. They meant something colder, something mechanical. They meant energy split against itself. The Emerald Tablet states it without mercy. All things are dual. All truths are but half-truths. Modern minds love the first half of that sentence and ignore the second, because the second half implies something uncomfortable. If you cling to one side of a truth, you automatically generate its opposite, and you become trapped between them. Think of fear in courage. Most people believe courage is the absence of fear. The ancients knew that courage is fear fully included.
not resisted. I still remember the first time I truly understood this, not intellectually, but viscerally. I was sitting in silence, attempting a simple breath practice. Nothing mystical, nothing dramatic, and yet, as I followed the breath, a tension surfaced in my chest. Instinctively, I tried to relax it. That was the mistake. The tension intensified. My mind labeled it anxiety, my body labeled it danger, and suddenly, I was at war with myself. This is the exact moment where polarity is born. The mind chooses a side, calm over tension, and the body rebels. The ancient Egyptians warned about this precise trap. They carved images of twin serpents, not to symbolize good and evil, but two currents of the same force, pulling away from each other only because awareness has fractured. The twin serpents were never enemies, they were mirrors. And this is where most modern seekers fail. They hear unify opposites and immediately try to erase one side. Erase fear, erase anger, erase doubt, erase desire. The priests would have considered that psychological vandalism, because every time you suppress one pole, the other grows monstrous in the dark. This is not philosophy, this is observable neurobiology. Modern science confirms what Thoth encoded in symbol. When the brain perceives threat, it activates protective circuits. When you fight those circuits, the nervous system interprets you as the threat, so the system escalates. That is why people who try to be positive often feel secretly exhausted, brittle, or numb. They are running a civil war in silence. The Hermetic law of polarity begins with a brutal admission. The opposite you reject is the energy you lack access to. Anger rejected becomes depression. Desire rejected becomes apathy. Fear rejected becomes dissociation. And here comes the first warning. Mental trap number 1, spiritual bypassing. The ancients despised false serenity. They mocked it. There is a fragment from a lost commentary on the Emerald Tablet that translates roughly as, "Those who polish one side of the mirror blind themselves with the shine." Peace does not come from choosing the higher emotion. It comes from holding both without flinching. Now listen carefully, because this is the first practical opening of the key. The first inner act, witness without correction. Close your eyes. Do not change your breathing. Do not slow it, do not deepen it, do not improve it. Just notice. Whatever sensation is strongest right now, tension, boredom, restlessness, calm, do not label it as good or bad. Instead, silently say, "This too belongs." You may feel resistance immediately. A voice may argue, "This is uncomfortable, this is pointless, I'm doing it wrong." Good. That voice is polarity revealing itself. Now, and this is subtle, notice that the observer of the sensation is not tense. The awareness watching discomfort is not uncomfortable. This is the hidden hinge. Ancient Egyptians called this the still point. Indian yogis called it the witness consciousness. Tibetan texts call it Rigpa, glimpsing itself. Modern neuroscience calls it meta-awareness. Different languages, same mechanism. When awareness stops choosing sides, energy stops leaking. Something strange may happen here. A warmth in the chest, a spreading quiet, a sudden emotional surge, or nothing at all, just a clean, neutral presence. All of these are valid. Side effect warning. Some people experience a brief wave of sorrow or grief at this stage. This is not regression. It is the nervous system releasing the effort of constant inner judgment. Do not analyze it. Do not dramatize it. Let it pass like weather. The priests warned, do not cling to the release, or it becomes another pole. This is the paradox. The moment you chase peace, you lose it. The moment you allow conflict to exist without interference, peace arrives quietly. Now, understand something essential. This practice is not about balance. Imbalance implies effort. This is about collapse, the collapse of false separation. When fear and courage are seen as one energy, when tension and relaxation are seen as one wave, when thought and silence are seen as one field, the mind stops tearing reality apart. And when that happens, even once, the nervous system learns a new pattern. You may not feel enlightened, you may not feel dramatic bliss, but something irreversible has occurred. The system has tasted coherence. And once coherence is tasted, fragmentation is never fully convincing again. This is why the ancients insisted, one correct experience outweighs 1,000 repetitions. Before moving on, seal this stage. Take one slow breath and quietly, either out loud or inwardly, say, I allow both. If you feel a subtle
is the hidden chamber where opposites dissolve, not by force, but by exhaustion. It is difficult to explain this place to someone who has never brushed against it, because the still point does not feel like progress. It feels like nothing happening, and that is precisely why the untrained mind panics. The ancient Egyptians did not teach this openly. They embedded it in architecture, in corridors where narrow ceilings lowered, air thickened, until the initiate felt subtly trapped. Not physically, internally. Anyone who has ever stood alone inside a stone chamber deep within an Egyptian temple knows this truth. Silence there is not empty. It presses back. Your thoughts grow louder. Your breathing feels intrusive. Your sense of time begins to wobble. Modern people would call this anxiety. The priests called it the threshold of unification. Because when stimulation drops, the mind loses its favorite weapon, distraction. And with distraction gone, opposites rush forward to be resolved. This is where the still point appears, not as peace, but as a narrow ledge between two forces that have exhausted themselves. In India, this moment was described as kumbhaka, the pause between inhale and exhale. In Tibetan breath yogas, it was hidden inside the gap between thoughts. In Hermetic texts, it was never named directly, only symbolized as a dot inside a circle. The dot is not balance. The dot is the end of motion. I still remember the first time I touched it unintentionally. I was practicing what I believed to be a simple breathing exercise, counting breaths, trying to calm the mind. After several minutes, the breath shortened naturally. Then something unexpected happened. There was a pause. Not a held breath, not control, not effort, just a gap. And in that gap, the usual inner arguments went silent. Fear did not disappear, thought did not vanish, but they stopped pulling. For a fraction of a second, nothing needed to be fixed. That second rewired something fundamental. Mental trap number 2, forcing the gap. This is where many people fail, and some destabilize themselves. The still point cannot be hunted. If you try to hold your breath to reach it, you trigger survival circuits. If you strain to stop thought, you create internal resistance. If you romanticize the silence, you miss it. The ancient priests warned plainly, the pause arrives when effort dies. Now, listen carefully. This is a practice that was once punishable to teach publicly. The second inner act, entering the gap without control. Sit comfortably. Do not lie down. Let the spine be upright but not rigid. Imagine being suspended gently from the crown of the head. Now breathe naturally. Do not count. Do not modify. Do not deepen. Simply notice the inhale, notice the exhale. At the end of the exhale, do nothing. Not wait, not hold, just don't interfere. At first, the breath will rush back in immediately. That is normal. Stay patient. After several cycles, the nervous system begins to trust that you are not trying to suffocate it. And then, briefly, a pause emerges on its own. It may last half a second. It may last 2 seconds. Duration does not matter. What matters is what happens inside that pause. Thought weakens. Emotion flattens. The sense of I must do something relaxes. This is the still point. Side effect warning. Some people feel disoriented or emotionally exposed afterwards. This is not harm. It is the mind realizing it is not in full control and reacting defensively. If fear arises, return attention to the physical sensation of sitting. Feel the weight of the body. Ground. The priests insisted on grounding for a reason, because the still point dissolves polarity, and polarity is how the ego navigates reality. Now here is the secret rarely explained. The still point does not unify opposites by reconciling them. It unifies them by making them irrelevant. When the pause is present, fear and courage have no stage. Desire and aversion lose momentum. Past and future blur. Modern physics has an echo of this insight. At the quantum level, particles behave differently when observed, but when observation ceases, probability collapses. The still point is the collapse of inner probability. No choice, no evaluation, no split, just presence without preference. This is why ancient texts describe it as terrifying and holy, because a mind addicted to control experiences it as death, but a soul exhausted by conflict experiences it as relief. Now, and this is crucial, do not mistake the still point for an end goal. Mental trap number 3, attachment to silence. The moment you say, I want that again, or that was special, you have already stepped back into polarity. Silence versus noise, sacred versus mundane. The Hermetic key does not create sacred states, it removes false divisions between states. If the still point appears, allow it. If it vanishes, allow that too. This is the unification. Before we move forward, anchor this stage. Take one natural breath and say quietly, I rest between. If you felt even a flicker of the gap, comment, the still point opened. Not for display, for synchronization.
The forbidden reunion that most spiritual systems warn you away from because it ends the need for moral struggle. There is a lie so old that it feels like instinct. The lie says, light must conquer darkness. Purity must overcome corruption. The higher self must dominate the lower. This lie has powered religions, empires, and inner wars for millennia. And Thoth considered it catastrophic, because light that fights darkness creates more shadow. The Egyptian priests did not seek to become good. They sought to become whole. That distinction changes everything. I remember the night this became unavoidable for me. I had been practicing regularly, breath, silence, witnessing. On the surface, things were improving. Calm lasted longer, reactivity softened, and yet, beneath it all, something began to stir. Dreams grew darker. Old memories resurfaced uninvited. Thoughts I believed I had outgrown returned with sharp clarity. At first, I panicked. I thought I was regressing. This is where most people stop. They tighten discipline. They double down on positivity. They declare the shadow an enemy. And that is exactly how the shadow gains power. The Hermetic texts never describe the shadow as evil. They describe it as exiled energy. Everything you were told not to feel, every impulse you learned to suppress, every truth that threatened belonging. None of it disappeared. It went underground, and underground it learned to whisper. Modern psychology agrees, reluctantly. What is repressed does not dissolve, it waits, and it expresses itself sideways: anxiety, addiction, sabotage, chronic fatigue. Thoth's solution was neither indulgence nor suppression. It was recognition without identification. Mental trap number 4. Confusing integration with expression. This is critical. Integrating shadow does not mean acting it out. It does not mean justifying harmful impulses. It does not mean abandoning responsibility. The priests were precise. To see is not to obey. To name is not to enact. Shadow integration happens in awareness, not behavior. Now we move into the most emotionally charged practice of the key, the third inner act, sitting with the unwanted. Close your eyes. Bring to mind a trait you dislike in yourself. Not the one you talk about publicly, not the socially accepted flaw, the real one. Jealousy, resentment, control, a hunger for validation, a quiet cruelty, a wish to disappear. Do not dramatize it, do not explain it. Just notice where it lives in the body. The chest, the throat, the stomach, the jaw. Now, and this is where courage replaces morality, say inwardly, you are allowed to exist. Not forever, not unchecked, not in action, but in awareness. You may feel shame surge, resistance tighten, a voice protest, if I accept this, I become it. That voice is the guardian of fragmentation. Here is the secret that ends its argument. What you fully allow in awareness loses the need to control behavior, because behavior is often the shadow's attempt to be seen. When seen, it relaxes. Something strange often happens next. The energy of the shadow begins to change texture. What felt heavy becomes warm. What felt sharp becomes fluid. What felt dangerous becomes informative. This is alchemy, not metaphorical, but nervous system level. Ancient texts describe this as turning lead into gold. Modern neuroscience would call it memory reconsolidation. Same process, different language. Warning side effects. Some people experience waves of grief, anger, or sudden clarity after this practice. Do not attach meaning too quickly. The psyche is reorganizing. Old contracts are dissolving. If emotions intensify beyond comfort, open your eyes. Name objects in the room. Return to the present. Grounding is not weakness, it is wisdom. Now understand this. Light and shadow are not opposites. They are the same force interpreted differently by context. Anger becomes boundary, fear becomes intuition, desire becomes creative fire. When unified, they stop sabotaging each other. This is why so many traditions avoided teaching this publicly. A person who no longer fears their own darkness is difficult to manipulate. They do not need enemies. They do not need purity narratives. They do not need permission to be whole. Before leaving this section, seal the reconciliation. Place one hand on the chest, one on the belly. Take a slow breath and say, "Nothing in me is forbidden." If you felt a release, even subtle, comment, "The shadow has returned," not as confession, as completion.
Is the final Hermetic realization. Peace is not created, it is revealed when the war ends. There is a moment described in the deepest Hermetic fragments that most translators soften because it terrifies the rational mind.
They call it the coincidence of opposites. Not balance, not harmony, not compromise. Coincidence. The moment when opposing forces are discovered to have always been the same movement, seen from different angles. The Egyptians did not depict this with gentle symbols. They carved gods with dual faces, bodies that were half light, half dark, crowns that belonged to life and death simultaneously. To the uninitiated, these images looked monstrous. To the priests, they were honest. Because when the final split dissolves, the self you thought you were cannot remain intact. I remember the night this understanding arrived, not as insight, but as a quiet shock. I was not meditating, I was not practicing, I was washing my hands. And suddenly, there was no inner commentary, no judgment, no comparison, no "this should be different." The sound of water, the sensation of skin, the movement of breath, all happening without ownership. For a few seconds, there was no observer separate from experience, and in that moment, something unmistakable occurred. There was peace, not as an emotion, but as the absence of friction. Not happiness, not bliss. Peace like a system no longer overheating. This is what Thoth encoded as the final key. Mental trap number 5, chasing the state. The coincidence of opposites cannot be reproduced on command. The moment you try to return to it, you recreate division. Here versus there, now versus then, peace versus non-peace. The priests warned, those who seek the union have already split it. This realization arrives only when all previous efforts have been exhausted. Witnessing, pausing, integrating, not as steps, but as erosion. Erosion of false boundaries. Now, here is the final practice, and it is almost insultingly simple. The 4th inner act, letting reality be whole. Do not close your eyes. Do not breathe differently. Just look. Pick any object near you. Do not name it. Do not analyze it. Do not improve it. Let it exist exactly as it is. Now notice something subtle. There is no boundary between the seeing and the seen. The distinction exists only in thought. When thought relaxes, even briefly, the division collapses. This is the coincidence, inner and outer, subject and object, self and world, not philosophically, experientially. Side effect warning. Some people feel disoriented after tasting this, a sense of "who am I now?" a mild grief for old identities, a quiet fear of groundlessness. This is natural. The ego loses its job when there is no inner war to manage, but something stronger remains. Presence without tension, clarity without effort, action without self-violence. This is inner peace, not as serenity, but as coherence. The ancients insisted, one true unification alters the field permanently. Even if the mind returns, even if conflict arises again, something remembers. The body remembers, the nervous system remembers, the soul remembers. Before we close, seal the final key. Take one breath and say quietly, I no longer divide. If something's settled, comment, the opposites have united. Not for belief, for resonance. The closing, the circle remains open. If you have followed this journey to the end, understand this. You were never being taught something new. You were being reminded of what fragmentation made you forget.
This channel exists not to entertain, but to preserve and reactivate knowledge that only survives through living transmission. When you subscribe, you are not following a channel, you are stepping into a shared field. When you like or share this video, you are not boosting content, you are strengthening resonance. When you comment to confirm your journey, you are not speaking into emptiness, you are anchoring coherence for others who arrive later. Each action contributes a vibration, and together, those vibrations keep ancient knowledge alive, not as belief, but as experience. If this work resonated, remain. If it disturbed you, remain. If something inside you shifted quietly and cannot be explained, remain. Because the Hermetic key was never meant to be owned, it was meant to be remembered together.